Hello friends! In this video, I'm going to show you how your website can go from this with the boring loading state every time you are fetching some data, every time you're maybe loading something in the client, you see something like that, to this, where right off the bat, everything is loaded nicely and your application doesn't have to go back and forth from server to server and get the data. It's already there in the client. This is obviously going to be a solution that only some applications are going to benefit from. So we'll talk a little bit about the benefits, the costs of doing something like this as well. So we will start by, I guess, looking at the code that is currently running in production on this repository. So this version that I showed you is production, obviously, where this is what I have right now, and this deployment is something that I've been working on for this video, so I haven't deployed it to production yet. So we'll go to my repo and my main branch, and we'll go into components and blog and post list, and this is pretty much how I'm fetching the data in the client right now. So, okay, actually, I don't think it's over here. This is actually going to be in pages. So pages, blog, and we could just go to any of these, but we'll just go to the index page. So that is this page. So what I'm doing, what I'm doing is I'm using this hook to fetch the data from GraphQL, right when hooks run when the React component mounts. And then I get this data and I pass the data to my post list. So that was what we were looking at before. The post list is in components, and it looks something like this. And it says that it's data prop, or its posts prop, is optional. So it's maybe undefined. And then when I'm returning the component, I say, are there posts? And if there aren't, then just return for me this something is wrong with our server thing. Actually, what am I because that's not it. So what am I returning? Returning something. Oh yeah, I'm saying if loading, then return this loading state right here. So how can I get rid of this? Well, I guess this is a really good opportunity to use static site generation from Next.js. So when you have a blog like this, and maybe you post to it weekly, maybe you post to it monthly, something like that. The data is dynamic. Like, you could post and then you would want this data to update in the client. Pretty much, if you post a new post, you want that post to be the first one at the top here. But it's kind of predictably dynamic. So you could actually decide, I want to treat this like a static site and have all of the data already loaded in the client when the user comes to look at my posts. So here's how you can do that. Over here is the branch that I had deployed that I showed you that was like working much faster, and that's exporting this get static props function from the index component. So this function is just something that Next.js is like looking for, and when they see this, they say, okay, instead of fetching this data at runtime, we're going to fetch this at build time. So when pretty much you push changes to a branch and Vercel starts building your project, they're actually going to fetch this data while they're building it and then just inject it into the client so that as soon as the page loads, the data is already in there. So that's really cool. You just return this props object, and then that is available in the props of your component right here. So I'm doing that to pretty much get the blog posts here, and then in the individual posts thing, I'm taking the ID. So this is another cool thing. You can also use this get static paths function. You can export this function to pretty much get the value of this ID. So what is this this file? This is like a little Next.js trick for if you have like dynamic paths right here. You don't get a router with Next.js essentially. You can just pretty much the way you set up your repository determines the way they set up your routing for you. So this file is in /blog, so /blog/id is going to be like when I go here to blog 156. And get static paths pretty much returns a paths object that has all of your IDs in it. So I named this ID, and that's why I return the object ID with all of my post IDs. So I pretty much just made this query to say, find all of the posts that I want to be fetched during build time, and give me their IDs. So I'm getting that from GraphQL, and then returning that from getStaticPaths. So when you do that, this ID becomes available in the props of getStaticProps. So now that's passed through right here, and I have it right there. So I could actually use this ID to query more data in getStaticProps, and that's where I'm saying get a single post with the ID that matches the ID that I'm passing in, and then send that data to pretty much the props of my component. And that data is right here. And the ID I could send through too. So you have access to all that data through the static site generation functions. And it's very nice. By the way, yeah, if you name this something else, like say in my tags, I named it tag, then you just pass through from getStaticPaths, you just pass through tag instead. So that's really nice how that works. And pretty much every tag that comes out of this query, Next.js is going to fetch all of those tags, fetch all the data for each of those like dynamically rendered pages during the build, and then yeah, pretty much your site is already built when someone goes to use it on the client side, and just the data is already there and it works nice and fast. So let's talk about kind of what this means. That if you want to do this, you pretty much have to know that like the data, you have to know when the data is going to change, and you have to be comfortable with choosing to rebuild your site every time the data does change. So let's kind of talk about what that means. So on my index page, I have this check out my last post component, and it's fetching this data from the database. That's why you have a little loading signal when the fetching is happening and the data isn't in the client yet. So I could also static generate this, and I would do that. I actually have already done that, and it's right here in my just the index file of my page. So what's new is the name of the component, and the content is right there. So content is coming from the props of my home component, and get static props is right here. So all this component needs is just pretty much the last row in the database from this content table. And I actually have my database pulled up right here. This is SSH'd into my server right here. So let's just query this content table, and we can see all of the rows in here. And the last row is the fifth one right here. And you can see that okay, so these are yeah, this is obviously not the most user-friendly way to interact with your database, but I like it. So the columns are ID, title, domain, summary, and image. Oh, okay, so yeah, this is 2 lines, so it's ID, title, image, domain, summary. So if we look at the last row, it says that it's ID 4, opportunity cost is the title, there's the image, and then there's the link. I called it domain. That was kind of a stupid name for a column, but it was a long time ago. And then the description. So that's what this select statement is querying for, and that's what we're waiting for when we do this. But if I'm over here and I go back, it's right there right off the bat. So that's the advantage, but the disadvantage is, I guess, the whole reason that I put this content in the database in the first place was that I wanted to be able to just update this whenever I want. So I want to be able to change this content without having to do any code changes. So that means that I pretty much, if I post something new or I record a video or something, I want to be able to go here or to go into my database and just add a new row and have this update. So let's say that I want to update this to my newest Twitch stream that I just recorded a little while ago. So this is the URL right here. If I want that to go here, all I do is go into the database and execute a query like this. And then it'll say that it inserted one. And then if I say select star again, then yeah, then the final row says, yeah, it's Twitch live coding, and different picture, different everything. And if I go to my production deployment, then I have new content right here. But even though this deployment is looking at the same database, the content isn't going to update because because this data was fetched a long time ago. So that's kind of the disadvantage. If I did want this data to update, I could go to this deployment right here, which is actually this, and this is really easy if you use Vercel, and just say redeploy. And then it's actually going to fetch that data again during this. This will probably take a minute, but pretty much the idea is you have to be comfortable with this data being fetched at build time in order to kind of get the benefits of this thing loading immediately as soon as you go here. If you're okay with kind of having this loading state, then and you really want to be able to update this, say you want to use a CMS to update this this content, that's kind of something that I would really like to build for this site. Yeah, once there's authentication and everything, and I can have an admin account on my own site, I would really like to have a CMS where I could change content really easily without doing code changes. Not that I really want that so badly. I just think it would be a cool project to build for myself. But if I ever wanted to do that, uh, pretty much every time you um, every time you update the data in the database, you also have to rebuild the app like we just did. So this guy, okay, still running, but that's the concept. There are just trade-offs to, yeah, getting the benefits of static site generation. Something like a blog where, I only post to my blog, a couple times a year. So when I do that, I'm happy to go back to my deployment and just like rerun it because it makes for such a better experience for my users when I'm doing this. But you wouldn't want to static generate something like something like a Reddit where like people that you have users and like people are posting to it all the time. You really just want to save this for situations when you are comfortable pretending that the content is in fact static. And yeah, like something like this, you see, like I do have the loading state on this side because these are my tweets, and like if I send a tweet, I don't want to have to rebuild my website every time I tweet something. If I do want this to like load a little faster because it's hitting the Twitter API every single time this client loads. Maybe it would be better to just fetch this the first time the user shows up, and then like put this data in Redis or put it in some kind of cache, so that you can retrieve it more easily. But static site generation is not really good for something like this, because then every time I tweet something, I have to remember, okay, now I go and rebuild the site. I mean, that's sort of boring. Okay, so you can see that in the deployment, it's telling us that we built all of these routes for you already and have already like fetched the data and done the static site generation. So it says, oh yeah, it says it built like tag / front end, tag / felt, tag / JavaScript, and then plus 28 more paths. So that means I have 28 plus this many tags in my whole thing. And then these are all my blog posts, so it built all of those. So you kind of get some, they tell you what they're doing on the deployment side when you do static site generation. And now I have my new data right there that, matches. So this is still the old deployment, but I have my new one right here. And if you just fetch this data in the client, then obviously like this, you can, like this ID is 7, so I just say, so I just do that, and then all of a sudden, like the data changes again. So there's benefits to being able to do this, but also you have that loading state. So it's kind of like, especially in the mobile version of this app, like this is the very first thing that the user sees when they go to my site on their phone. So I don't really want it to be, especially like on your phone, it's a lot slower. So I don't want it to be loading for so long every, like as the first thing that the person sees. I would just much rather that it be nice like this and just already generated right there. And by the way, like Next.js's secret sauce for this is like while they're building your site, they fetch that data and they put it right here in their dunder next underscore data dunder little script. So here's like all the rows and Twitch live coding. So there's the data, and that's how it can just like fetch it so quickly right when you load the site. Yeah, so this is how you could do static site generation to make some content a lot faster if you think it's appropriate for just the situation that you're doing it in. Thanks everyone.